And we are live. What's going on, Facebook, LinkedIn, and YouTube Live? It is your man, Coach Rowe. I'd like to welcome you to the first row. Today is Wednesday. And if it is Wednesday, you should know what that means. It's time for the Wednesday word. That is Wednesday word. Jumping straight into it. Tonight's topic is, ironically, jump and land. As always, I like to explain what I mean by my topic. So, what do I mean by the topic jump and land? Really, what I mean by the topic jump and land is the importance in our life, and the importance that it is in our life for us to be willing to jump, land, but not just land, jump again. And it's really about making faith-based decisions, not necessarily in the religious sense of faith-based, but just trusting and believing that when you jump, the next opportunity for you to land on is there for you to land on. So tonight I have 3 tools for the first row that I want to share with you when it comes to jump and land. Let's jump straight into it. Tool number 1 when it comes to jump and land is how we land matters. So you guys know I always try to put the most important tool first. And at some point, honestly, in life, we're going to have to jump. It's almost like a natural reaction. We're going to have to jump at some point in life. And so being a little less concerned about the jumping aspect, but being more focused on how we land. And how we land, the reason that matters is because it depends on what type of surface we're landing on. We could use this like in physics or in like a real world scenario where if I were to jump off of a high dive into a pool, I'm not going to land flat on my stomach. I'm not going to land flat on my back. In fact, even if I'm going in feet first, I'm probably going to plug my nose to keep water from shooting up my nose and clearing out my brain and my eyes. So how we land in that situation matters. If I'm jumping, when I was a kid, I used to love to play tag and I was a little bit reckless. I'm surprised I didn't break more bones when I was a kid. But I was a little bit reckless. So like in order to not be tagged, I was willing to jump off the playground equipment into I don't remember what we had. We didn't have, put it this way. I know what we didn't have was the soft foam padding that kids have nowadays to land on. That I do know we didn't have. But whatever we were jumping off the playground or whatever I was jumping off the playground equipment onto, it wasn't a forgiving surface. So I had to be willing to bend my knees somewhat to absorb some of that shock. Or, that you'll see in movies or you'll see people who are trained, when they land, they'll tuck and they'll roll to kind of remove all that force throughout or spread that force out throughout their body versus just landing hard and probably breaking something. But this tool was important because if we are going to land, how we land has to matter. The reason it matters, though, is because if we land inappropriately, typically we will create some form of injury, and not even just injury in the physical sense. Sometimes we'll create mental injuries. That's when I was a kid, there was a saying like, if you fall off a horse, get right back on the horse or something like that. I don't think that's how it goes, but basically the equivalent of like, hey, because you fell off this horse, you're probably going to be afraid to get back on horses. So it's best to get back on a horse immediately. So that way you're not allowing that fear to set. And then you have this fear of jumping back onto a horse or jumping back in the saddle. Maybe that's what it was. I don't remember. But the reason also how we land matters is because if we do experience an injury, then our ability to jump is kind of delayed or it may be put on hold. So think about this from a financial sense. I forget what year, but we'll go with the 2009 housing crisis when housing prices were plummeting. People were filing bankruptcy left and right. And a lot of people were short selling. That's what it was called. A lot of people were short selling their homes. And in the short sell, the whole purpose is okay, I'm going to sell my home for less than what I even owe on it, but it's going to get me from under the loan. But the problem with that was because you sold it for less than what the loan was worth, now there's this cool off period before you can actually buy another house. And I remember when I was looking to purchase my first home, that it was like, oh, they were like, well, do you have any short sales? Have you had any short sales? I think it was like in the last 3 years, have you had any short sales? And it was like, no, this is the first house that I've purchased. They're like, okay, have you had any foreclosures, bankruptcies? And they're asking all these questions that come with time constraints. And so when I say how we land matters, what I'm saying is if we land inappropriately and we injure ourselves, if we overextend ourselves on buying a house because, back then people were just like, yeah, I make $1 million a month, so I can afford this $800,000 a month mortgage, and they couldn't. But because they were landing inappropriately, that injury of short selling their house or going into foreclosure or dealing with bankruptcy created time constraints in which they wouldn't be able to get a house for a certain period of time. And so when it came time to jump again, when the market finally settled, we figured out, okay, this is what the prices of these houses should have been versus what the prices were. When everything settled and the opportunity came to get a house, some people weren't in a position to jump. They weren't ready to jump because they hadn't fully recovered from how they landed previously. And that's why how we land matters when we're jumping. Again, remember, the purpose of this particular Wednesday word is to jump, land, jump, land, jump, land, jump, land. Well, if you can't jump, how are you going to land? Once you land, you've landed. There's no reverse land jump. I don't even know how to say that, but there's no reverse of that. It's like you've already landed. And if you've been injured and you're unable to jump again, hopefully you landed somewhere that's comfortable that you can spend for a little bit of time. But in most cases, when you jump and you land and you're injured, even if it's a comfortable space that you've landed on, it's not necessarily the place that you want to be for an extended period of time. And so that's why this became the first tool for me. Basically, how we land is important. And I also, when I was writing about this particular tool, I started thinking about the first time I did skydiving, and it was tandem skydiving. So tandem skydiving is where you don't have control of the chute. You're just kind of along for the ride, and you're strapped to another person, and they have the chute and the expertise to make sure that you make it to the ground safely. But even in that, when we jumped out of the plane, I mean, it was a great experience. But in order to land, before we even jumped out of the plane, he was like, hey, look, here's what's going to happen when we come towards the ground. What I'm going to do is I'm going to tell you to put your feet up, allow me to land with my feet, and then you'll put your feet down. And that's what we did. So as we approached the ground, I brought my feet up, he landed with his feet, and then he told me when to put my feet down. The reason being is because if both of our feet are down, we may not be in perfect harmony and synchronized in order to land and stay up. I might trip him up, he might trip me up, and once we fall, we're still going at a pretty good speed that we could injure ourselves. And the other thing about how we land matters is it's not even just about how we land that matters. It's also what tools we take with us in order to land. In the sense of, you can jump out of a plane without any equipment. It's not going to be a fun ride at the end of that ride. Or you can jump out of a plane with a parachute and the proper equipment and make it safely to the ground. So that's tool number one. How we land matters. Make sure you have the proper tools. Make sure that you're taking the proper precautions or the proper steps so that your landing is appropriate for the type of terrain that you're going to land on. Tool number two, when it comes to jump and land, is jumping is a sign of faith. Now, again, I don't mean this in the spiritual sense, not like faith, I have to believe in God to make this jump. That's not what I'm referring to, though I've used my belief in God in order to make some incredible leaps in life. That's not what I mean with this particular tool. But imagine like this. If your first jump is unsuccessful, or not even your first jump, if your most recent jump was not a success, you might be hesitant to want to jump again. Why? Because that last jump I took, it didn't work out very well for me. So I'm going to keep my butt on the ground for a while. But the thing is that think about the one jump that you had that was a failure, and then measure that against the number of jumps that you've had that have been successes in your life. How many jumps have you taken? How many moments have you spent in your life making jumps that have actually worked out for you, that have moved you to a better space in life, that have moved you to a better mental health, a better financial health, a better relationships with people, a better circle of people, a better job? How many jumps have you made that have worked out? And that's why I say jumping is a sign of faith, but the faith is believing and trusting in your ability to land effectively and jump again. That's why jumping is a sign of faith, because All faith is at the end of the day is trust, trusting that when you jump, the landing or the ground is going to be there. Could you imagine how afraid you would be as a child, as an adult, as a senior citizen? Doesn't matter. Could you imagine how afraid you would be if literally the moment you jumped off the ground, you weren't sure that the ground was going to be there when you came back down? That would be terrifying. You would probably have people not willing to run because they wouldn't want both feet off the ground at the same time. They're like, look, I'll just kind of shuffle my feet back and forth to make sure I have both feet attached to the ground at all times because I don't want this ground to get away from me. Jumping as a sign of faith really is a sign of belief that landing is possible, whether we're jumping up or we're jumping down. And I started thinking about whether jumping up or jumping down matter. It really doesn't matter. We might be jumping up a level. We might be taking a leap of faith, and that requires descent. I actually had that experience when I first started working. I went from being an IT recruiter, making okay money, to working in a call center doing uh, basically dedicated account services for shipping. That for me was a leap of faith that I was jumping down from the area that I was at. But I was like, my understanding is that I'm making this leap because I believe in my ability to jump again once I land. And fortunately, that has significantly worked out for me in my career today, in the aspect of how many jumps I had to make. Now, here's the kicker is that in my journey of truly trusting in faith that my jumps are going to work out, and that doesn't mean they've always worked out, but trusting that they're going to work out, what I've learned to do is to stop allowing the fear, which for me in many areas of my life, it was the fear of no, hearing no, 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 not going to happen. Stop allowing that fear of hearing no to keep me from jumping. I now operate in a space where I'm jumping and you're going to have to tell me while I'm in the air no. And then I'll land and say, okay, it's a no, no problem. But at least I made the jump. What was happening previously was I would be in my headspace. And my headspace was, if I ask for this help, or if I ask for this permission, or if I asked for whatever it was that I was asking for, they're going to tell me no. So I'm just not going to ask. And then what ended up happening was I was telling myself no. And what I found is when I stopped doing that, oftentimes people were telling me yes. I remember when we got our first house, we were short about, I think, $2,000. We were short about $2,000 to close escrow, because I was like, okay, we got this part done, we got that part done, we got this part done, we got that part done, and then it was like, oh, you need to bring $2,000 more to the table to close escrow. Didn't know about that part, but I got to figure it out. And I remember I was drafting an email to a very close friend, and it was like, hey, this is where my family's at. We're in this bind. We're at the last lap of the race, final three steps, and this is what I need. I need help. And at that point in life, to me, $2,000, well, still at this point in life, $2,000 was a lot of money to be asking somebody to like borrow. That was a lot of money. But because I made that jump and said, hey, I'm going to swallow some humble, take a bite or swallow a bite or two of humble pie and ask for the help, that person was happy to help me. I paid them back all of their money since then, like even I think a little bit earlier than what I anticipated I would be able to pay it back. And we were able to buy our first home. And that jump, that simple jump of acquiring our first home, put us in a situation or in a position to where since then, I have been able to jump into another home. Well, we sold that home, but I was able to jump into another home and another home and another home. And now my wife and I were just having dinner, and we were talking about how we're going to try to jump into another home in a space where a lot of people are afraid of home prices and afraid of interest rates. We're trying to figure out how to solve the problem versus being afraid to face the problem. Casual, what's going on? I see you here. You say, I'm afraid to jump. Let me bring you up. I'm afraid to jump. I got a tool for you. The next tool, I think, will be it'll resonate with you. You let me know if it resonates with you. But that's really what tool number 2 is that jumping is a sign of faith. It is something that once we do and we start removing ourselves from the fear that is keeping us from jumping, it's almost like being weighted down. When astronauts go to space, they have to wear weights because gravity is different. It's almost like that, but being on Earth. You have all the weights to be on the moon, but you're still here on Earth. So now it's harder for you to jump. And so instead of having like a 3-foot jump, you have like a 6-inch jump. And that's what fear operates for us as when we are trying to jump, and it works counter to our faith. Is it weighs us down and it keeps us in this hesitant state. It's almost like I remember when I was younger, we were at this event and there were some cheerleaders there, and these cheerleaders knew how to do backhand springs. And I was like, man, I want to do backhand springs. Man, I want to do backflips. This is when I was younger, and I didn't have as much fear as I probably should have had, and probably should have taken some training before I started doing this. But I get in position. They're like, okay, all you got to do is just commit. You got to just jump back and commit. And I literally jumped back, and I committed to the jump back, and then I hesitated to the follow through. And so what ended up happening is I jumped from standing straight up and landed straight on my head and then fell over. So I didn't make the backflip because I was hesitant. And that's what fear does, is it causes us to hesitate, or it causes us to just simply stay on the ground because the ground is comfortable. The ground is what we know. The air is what's unfamiliar. The next level is what's unfamiliar. The level that we're jumping to is what's unfamiliar. And so that fear of not successfully reaching that next level, that next step, can keep us from making that jump. Or even after we make a jump, that fear can still set in. And then what happens is we don't jump again. There's levels that we're trying to jump to. So that's tool number 2. And then lastly, tool number 3, when it comes to jump and land, is the first new jump is the hardest. At first, I had it as the first jump is the hardest, but then I thought about how many times in my life I've jumped and how hard it was each time when the situation was new. And so, Casual, when you say you're afraid to jump, understand that fear of our first jump is natural, but this is what we can use to our advantage as well, because it's understanding that we have faced this fear before, and we have faced this fear before and things have worked out. We've faced this fear before and things haven't worked out. But I would wager that more times than not, when we face this fear, things work out more often than it doesn't work out. And so if everybody watching tonight has already made a jump or two, a first new jump or two, then everybody tonight who's watching or watching via the replay has the ability to lean on that experience of what it's like to be afraid to jump, on what it's like to not be sure you're ready for the jump, to what it's like to successfully land the jump. So recently I just started a new position. It's about a month and a half ago I started a new position. And in that new position, I remember when I first landed, there was just like a lot of uncertainty. It was like, okay, I went through the interview process. I got the job. Great. I have the job now. And then all of a sudden it was like, I was hesitant to make that next jump of like, okay, let's get started. And though I'm working, trying to understand the business and all these different things, there's a lot of things that are unfamiliar to me, and I'm learning and I'm taking notes and I'm writing down and I'm researching. And so to be in a space now, a month and a half later, I'm able to look back at even just a month and a half ago to where I didn't know much about the company. I didn't know names of key players. I didn't know acronyms. Shoot, just acronyms. There's so many acronyms at the company. I didn't even know the acronyms for the company. But it's once I made that first new jump, hey, you went through the interview process. It's I don't know for because of the way the world works today, a lot of people are they change jobs very frequently. For me, I'm pretty much like, hey, I'm looking for where I can kind of like establish roots. And so for me, that first jump was saying, okay, are you willing to leave the comfort of the ground of the employer that you work for today? Are you willing to do that? And once I made that jump and things landed, okay, I'm at the new company now. So that reinforces some of my confidence in the fact that my jumps are possible because I made it past that first jump. So apparently I could do the next new jump and the next jump and the next jump in sequential order. Now, that doesn't mean that sometimes in the midst of making these jumps that you're not going to fail. It doesn't mean that in the sense of what I would call the Wright brothers syndrome. The Wright brothers failed a lot of times on making airplanes, like to the point where one of them was hospitalized for like 6 months, failed, but they still kept getting into the sky, trying to figure it out, and eventually did figure it out. They didn't even figure out, honestly, a lot of people think the Wright brothers figured out what at the time was referred to as heavier than air flight. A lot of people think the Wright brothers figured that out. They didn't figure that out. They figured out how to control heavier than air flight, how to keep something in the air and not be at the mercy of how the breeze decides to blow that day. That's what they were able to figure out. I see this here. I see you here, casual. It's a first new jump. I have completely grounded myself. There's a way to get out of that. It's not a comfortable way, but it is truly about forcing yourself to make jumps. And it's not that every jump that some jumps, I think that some of the jumps that we make do require a sound mind, a sound plan to do or to execute. But there's sometimes where I feel like we know when we are in a space where we've already gone past the first jump and now we're just being hesitant because we made it past that one and we'll just stay there and celebrate. Like, I don't want too much. No, I'm like, hey, if I made this jump, I'm trying to make the next jump and the next jump and the next jump. And yeah, along the way, it might be a little scary. Along the way, I might jump in the wrong direction and end back up at the base level of the mountain and have to start jumping back up again. But either way, the pure act of jumping, of taking the leap, making the leap, the pure act of that develops our confidence and it allows us to become more sure in the types of decisions we're making with our life. Man, casual, I like you on the lives. You keep it interactive. You also got here. I went back to school and finished this spring, but have barely put out any resumes. Still stuck in my old job. You wouldn't be the first person to go to school and then not do anything with your education. But a lot of that comes from in my experience when I've gone to school and then like, okay, I'm still going to stay and do this. In my experience with school, it's been because of, well, now I'm going into my career. I'm going into something that's new. I'm going into something that I only know in theory and I might not be good at. But what I find or what I have found in those experiences has been that every time that I have made a leap into something new, into something that I didn't know, but had the belief that I could figure it out, I figured it out. The challenge of moving from one job that I've been at for 5 years to a new job that I've been at for a month and a half is I'm no longer the subject matter expert, but I'm figuring it out. And I have the jumps that I'm making now move me towards the belief that one day I will be the subject matter expert in the organization that I'm in today. But it's getting past that anxiety, honestly, that anxiety and hesitancy to want to make that leap. So I can tell you, no matter how many times you graduate from how many schools, pristine Ivy Leagues or whatever they may be, until you put yourself out there, it has not been my experience that somebody has come knocking on my door to offer me an opportunity. Even though this last one, it was because of the connections that I have within my network. But that's just not my experience for what I've seen with people. Everybody that I've always interviewed has applied to a job. It has never been, hey, you should talk to this person. They still have to apply to the job. Even the job that I got, hey, there's this job available, but you have to apply to it. So put yourself out there. Don't be afraid of that. And that this will be another new first jump for you. And it'll be the hardest part, putting yourself out there, because putting ourselves out there lends us to the opportunity of being rejected. And I honestly feel like when it comes to this whole topic of jump and land, is it's a fear of failure, a fear of rejection, and a fear of even further rejection of being an outcast or made mockery of, because our jump didn't work out how we thought it was going to work out. And we assume that um, everybody's going to in the old Carrie prom night, everybody's going to laugh at us. We're going to be the joke. We're going to be that person that people talk about, how, yeah, they thought they were going to make it and they didn't. Well, you could be that person without ever jumping. You don't have to jump to be that person. So jumping and ending up on that person, at least you made an effort and an attempt to be something greater. So that's what I have for you. And there is one bonus tool tonight that I do want to share with you, because it's not just about jumping and landing, but I've said this in almost every tool, is that it takes multiple jumps. From where I am today, well, from where I was, we'll say even 20 years ago to where I am today, it took multiple jumps. And some of those jumps were wrong jumps. Like, holy crap, that was not where I was trying to land. Now I got to jump 16 more times, like Mario up the little stairs to get to the final flag of the map. I have to jump all these little stairs now to get back to the top, just to jump to try to get the flag at the top again. But it takes multiple jumps. And that's the bonus tool to take away, is that I recommend we don't allow ourselves to be content with just one jump. Even where I am today, which I feel is a significantly successful space in life financially, and stay on this landing. I'm going to jump. I'm going to jump. And even if I land lower than where I was at this space, at least I jumped. That's the way I look at it. So that's what I have for you guys tonight. Really quick, I want to go over the 3 tools and the bonus tool for you one more time. The tools when it comes to jump and land again. Tool number 1 is how we land matters. Again, make sure that we do not get injured in our landing, or making sure we don't get injured in our landing allows us to be prepared to jump again. Tool number 2 is jumping is a sign of faith. Again, it takes faith in order to jump, and that faith is truly rooted in the belief in trusting the truths that we are standing upon. And then tool number 3 is the first new jump is the hardest. But in all honesty, it sets the stage of what to expect. Even if the first new jump is a failure, hey, that was hard. Let's jump again and see if we can land a little bit better this time. That's what the first new jump does, is it truly does set that stage. And then lastly, the bonus tool is it takes multiple jumps. You're not going to be able to jump over, what are they, Superman, you leap tall buildings in a single bound. Yeah, we're not doing that. We're going to go ahead and leap maybe 3 steps in the building in a single bound, and then another 3 steps, and another 3 steps until we get to the top of the building. That is my recommendation on jumping and landing. Take it or leave it. Have it your way. Before I jump into tonight's story, really quick, I'm going to catch up the chat because Casual is rocking with me tonight. Casual says, and I'm disappointed because I listened to you in Black Heights. Absolutely. I love Black Heights channel, man. You guys give lots of knowledge, but it's so hard for me to apply. I'm just really upset with myself, but I will try to jump. And then you said, oh, thanks again for another great show. Absolutely. No problem. You do know, and if you, I don't know if you're on his coaching platform or not, but sometimes it does require a mentor to teach you how to jump. It's no different than somebody teaching you how to shoot a jump shot. Somebody teaches you, okay, this is your foot placement. This is how you release. This is the arc. A coach can teach you that. I'm currently not taking coaching clients, but a coach can teach you that. And so whether it be from Antoine Wade of Black Heights, who's coaching you, or you find a mentor locally with you, or whatever it may be, sometimes you need that assistance to get you to that space where you're able to understand the fundamentals of jumping. So that way you're a little less anxious about the actual act of jumping. So that's what I'll leave you with. As always, I like to share a personal story, something that kind of got me thinking about this particular topic. And first off, let me give a shout out to my wife, because tonight I was in a space mentally where I was like, maybe I'm not going to do a Wednesday word tonight, babe. And she was like, babe, um, the Wednesday word for you is very therapeutic, and you probably should just do one tonight. And so I was like, okay, I'll do one. And I gotta say, I actually this is another aspect of jumping, where I'm jumping and I'm landing at the end of this Wednesday word. And my wife is 100% right. This is something that is very therapeutic for me, something that constantly reminds me of the spaces that I'm at, or the spaces that I've traveled through, or the mistakes that I've made, and the improvements that I made because of them. It's not just about the mistakes you make, it's about the improvements to your life that you make because of them. So, shout out to my wife. Miss Rowe, thank you very much for encouraging your husband to do a Wednesday word tonight. And I'm sure Casual thanks you as well, because he said another great show. But tonight's story, really what I was thinking about when I started thinking about tonight's story, was my journey from where I was in 2004 to where I am today. So an roughly 18-year journey. And in 2004, I was on welfare, single parent with a 2-year-old, on welfare, trying to figure out what the heck I was doing in life, because I had made a jump in the absolute wrong direction. um, but I thought about like the conversations that I was having and the mindset that I had at the time when I was on welfare. And my wife and I were just actually talking about this at dinner as well, about how some people will say, get on welfare, and they will try to remain qualified for welfare. They'll try to stay on welfare because they don't want to lose their benefits. Um, However, my mindset when I was on welfare was, how can I get off of welfare? And I remember when I got off of welfare, I wasn't completely off of it yet, but the first job I took while I was coming out of welfare was like $7.10. I want to maybe $7.25 an hour. I can't remember, but it was under $8 an hour. And I remember working at that job, working extremely hard and dealing with frustrating customers, um, and being like, man, it would kind of just be easier to be on welfare, because $7.25 I wasn't working like 40 hours a week, so I wasn't making enough money to like truly take care of myself and take care of my son. But what ended up happening in that experience is I went from working as like a customer service rep to being a key manager, making a little bit more money, to having more responsibilities, to like counting down drawers, being in a position of trust, to interacting with a customer who came in who was like, you'd be good at doing what I do. And that's when I transitioned from making $7, and I think at that point maybe 750 an hour, to 40,000 in a year. And mathematically, that's about $19 and some change an hour that I was making. And so I immediately doubled like my income and then some, just in being willing to jump, being willing to uh, take on more responsibilities, being willing to jump and interact with customers versus just being like, okay, this is your total. Thanks. Have a great day. Okay, next. Okay, this is your total. Great. Have a next day. It was a nice day. Next. It was intentionally jumping and interacting with people and networking with people, and being inquisitive about the lives of others, that truly got me to a space where I was able to make a leap and make a leap and make a leap. And then I was at $40,000, and I was like, man, I'm doing really, really well. And then the housing market closed out my job, and then I didn't have a job, and I went back to, not to welfare, but I went back to like this space of like, okay, now I'm on unemployment and I'm not making as much money. Now I'm getting grants for school, but that's still not as much money as I was making, to taking a job where I was making $15 an hour. So roughly a $4 pay decrease. And in that job, I remember kind of having this space where it was like, I want to jump into an opportunity because I want to work. Um, but I got to land at an opportunity that's at least $15 an hour. And I remember the company calling me and saying, "Hey, we really liked you in the interview. We want to offer you a position, but we want to know if you would take 1450." And I was like, "No, I can't. I can't afford to." It wasn't like out of arrogance. It was understanding that in order to land um, and not injure myself, I had to land at 15. And so I understood that I needed to land at 15. And then I was like, don't worry though, because once I'm here at 15, this is not where I intend to stay. I intend to move up. And I believe this is again that faith based action. I believe and have faith that if I'm given the opportunity to promote, to move up, to grow, I will seize those opportunities. And $15 an hour is not what I'm seeing as the opportunities that I want to be at. And over the course of 8 years, by making jump after jump after jump after jump after jump after jump, not only did I pass the 40,000 mark, I was closer to like 65,000 for the year, working at this company that I started off at $15 an hour at. And so I share this story because the importance of jumping and landing, the importance of not doubting that you have an ability, that you have a skill set, that you have value, the importance of not doubting that is critical to our ability to jump, land, and jump again. Now, today, financially, I'm even beyond where I was at the 62,000 mark. My wife and I have made good investments. I won't call them great investments. I feel like they're great, but we'll just call them good investments towards our future. And we are constantly trying to figure out how to make additional jumps to the next level financially. We're also trying to figure out how to make jumps and leaps and land in our relationship. Marriage is not something that is easy. So if you are afraid of jumping casual, let me tell you, you might want to get your jumping game on point before you get married. And if you're already married and you plan on jumping or you're afraid of jumping, I'm telling you now, there's nothing more powerful for a marriage than having two people who are willing to jump, land, and jump again, whether it's individually to become better on their own, because that supports the marriage, or if it's collectively together as partners, because that also supports the marriage. Being willing to jump, land, and jump again is a critical component to a healthy relationship, marriage or otherwise. So that's what I have for you guys. I'll make sure I share that with her casual. I'll let her. I'll be sure to thank her for you. Thank Miss First Row for you. But that's what I have for you guys tonight. As you guys know, the Carolyn Michelle and Billy Rowe Live is off air until the beginning of the new year. We are taking a break in between season 2 and season 3. But you can catch Carolyn Michelle this Friday on The Grind to Find anywhere you consume podcasts, Spotify, Apple, wherever you consume podcasts, you can consume The Grind to Find. That is Friday at 4 p.m. Pacific Standard Time, 7 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. That's when that show is released. And then I will continue to have Wednesday Words. I'm still on the fence on if some of them will be premieres or not until the end of November. And then I will be taking my 1 month break prior to the restart or the refresh for season 3 of Carolyn Michelle, Billy Rowe Live, and the Wednesday Word for season 3. So that's what I have for you guys tonight. As always, thank you for tuning in live. I super appreciate it, especially today. You guys don't know how much that means to me, but I'm super appreciative of you guys. As always, if you like this video, share it. If you do share it, please like it. I'm happy to engage with you. As you can see, Casual and I having our own conversation in the chat today. If you're watching live, but I'm also happy to engage with you in the comments up to the first 7 days that the content is released. Other than that, if there's anything that you need from me, you can contact me at anything that says at First Row, Instagram, Facebook, YouTube. You can contact me on First Row, anything. Casual, if you want to reach out to me, you're welcome to go to firstrow.com. And we can try to connect there. And I'd be happy to try to help you in regards to your jump and even looking at what maybe some of your job pursuit should be. But other than that, that's what I have for you guys today. Until the next time, one love, peace, and God bless. Thanks for sitting on the first row.